everybody! Hello, Void Dweller. Hello, everybody. I know it's a bit of an early start today. I am so sorry about that, but hey, it's E3 day, E3 Nintendo Day specifically, and hello, G-chan! Woo! I wanted to get a bit of an early start so I could hopefully try to fucking finish the Caanan and Alphard story before Nintendo's E3 starts. Because I know people are probably going to want to see that, and I don't want to interrupt it. So, hello, Zarmagus. Thank you for that helpful guide. It turns out that I have quite a substantial amount of post-game left. Including, this Caanan anime story here. Apparently there's 3 hours left in it. Holy fraps. Oh my... Jesus Louises Creases. Can you believe that? Oh good, it did save, it looks like. Because this is the action begins. Yep, here we go. Okay, so it did save. Thank God, because they knew how fucking long this was. Unlike the other one, which, like... Yeah, Nintendo's E3 is in, like, 3 hours, Void Dweller. And, so they definitely put save points. But even though the mission has started, there is a huge amount left. So I'm just going to try to get through this. I really want to see what... It's pretty telegraphed, I think. Like, this is just my theory, but I don't think it'll come to anyone's surprise that either Alphard will directly kill Caanan's master, or she will just, like, put him in a position to die, or something like that. So, it seems fairly obvious that that's what's going to happen. So, if not, then who knows? You know, maybe it'll be something different. But that'll be a big surprise if that's true. But that really seems to be where the story's heading. But anyway, I'm not going to react to it, Void Dweller. I don't have quite the setup for that. To the E3, I mean. I'll react to this story right now, though. Alright, let's get back into it. The time had come. They got up from their seats without a sound. Draped in their hoods, Caanan and Sadok made their way through the train. Sadaka, doing their best to draw no attention. Siam had put together a timeline to spend no more than 30 minutes at most on their infiltration. In addition to the soldier stationed in the passenger cars, it was possible that the enemy also had lookouts disguised as normal passengers. A seat left open for too long might arouse unwanted suspicion. The team needed to sneak into the freight car, obtain the payload, and return to their seats without a single minute wasted. Hello, Hollow Mirage. Welcome to the stream. Siam was too tall and muscular to be well suited for infiltration. He would hang back and act as the girl's rear guard. If the operation was discovered, his task would be to secure an escape route for them. We're in position. Sadaka called in on one of the tiny voice-activated radios that 3 carried. Synchronized watches. She and Caanan prepared to make their way to the final objective in the freight car up ahead. Despite their clashing personalities, they moved almost like twins as they went about their work. It was evidence that their training had instilled them with similar priorities. Just so I'm clear on this, Sadaka said. All you're bringing is that Beretta and 1 spare magazine. Yeah. Hope you're okay with that. Oh, yes. If it comes to a... God damn it. Freaking Alphard, you take such long pauses. Yes, if it comes to a firefight, I'll let you handle shooting back. My job here is code breaking. As long as I have my PC and someone to cover me, I'm good. Both of them were going in with a minimal loadout. As a covert agent in enemy territory, that made Caanan uneasy. But then, if a fight did break out here, the mission was already a partial failure. The organization couldn't spare equipment for a team that only needed it if they fouled things up. Have you checked the route? The route's fine, as long as you're fine. This isn't gonna be desk work. Not my specialty, but an acceptable level of risk. This isn't my first rodeo. What about you? You ready for this? I've ridden my share of wild horses. Once I get on, I don't fall off. Quite the swashbuckling little heroine, aren't you? Let's get this circus started. The garb that the two girls wore under their cloaks was quite different from the norm for Middle Eastern women. Aside from the fact that one wore red and the other black, their outfits were rather similar. Both of them are dressed for maximum freedom of movement. Yes, Oliver Roger is about to say, Caanan has a saber face. Oh, jeez. No problems with the infiltration route, Sadaka reported. We're on the move. With all the casual air of a traveler going for a stroll, and without any hesitation whatsoever, she headed for the outside of the train. No problems with the infiltration route. We're on the move. The call cut out. From here on, the team would retain radio silence except in cases of emergency. As the girls back up, Siam had to decide on a course of action. He could try making his way through the inside of the train, heading straight toward the sequestered freight car. It would make him obvious, but that would at least draw the guards' attention onto him for a time. He had no intention of trying to get into the freight car itself, of course. His goal would simply be to draw the guards' eyes. He could claim to be on his way to meet a friend. The guards would be sure to intercept him and try to usher him away from the freight car. While that was going on, Caanan and Sadaka would hopefully be able to sneak inside. But it seemed that wasn't going to be an option. There were no ordinary passengers in the cars where the guards were posted. If the thing they were protecting was what Siam thought it was, these guards would be good. Any unusual action he took would provoke them, and only heighten their alertness. He didn't want to do anything to complicate things for the girls. He decided that his best course of action was just to stay ready in case things went bottoms up. He checked the gun he'd hidden at his feet. Then he pictured in his mind the guards in their nearest compartment, their builds, their gear, their positions. Veteran fighter though he was, he could think of no good way to make up for the sheer difference in numbers. Hello T, welcome to the stream. If a fight did break out, it would still be 1 against 7. To break through an enemy position held by soldiers who knew what they were doing, he'd have to completely abandon his own better judgment. What's that? There's like a little beta symbol at the end there?
Those who are willing to rise above themselves can overcome any stroke of luck.
He was reminded of a story he'd been told as a student, a fable involving a board game. Life was represented by the board. Hello, T. Welcome to the stream. There was a clear, defined endpoint. One proceeded toward that end, but dire pitfalls have been set up on the way to the goal. Are you talking about chutes and ladders, Sam? It was a valuable lesson. One shouldn't have a goal in life. Rather, one shouldn't think of the end as the goal. The proper way to live one's life was to realize it was already over. One must focus on the moment. The game of striving for the goal, for the end, that was just a way of rushing headlong towards one's death. The priorities were backwards. One shouldn't have a goal in life. One shouldn't seek meaning in oneself, to seek reward, to seek proof that you've lived by achieving some hypothetical endpoint. That was a fool's game. Thank you, Void Dweller. I wasn't sure, but yeah, I might have, because like I was thinking in my head, did I say it or not? Okay, sorry. Siam's ability to live without hunting for such proofs was one of the very few things on which he prided himself as a mercenary. Slipping his gun out of its hiding place, Siam narrowed his eyes slightly. Until now, he had been a lone soldier, put to use however his employees deemed necessary. He held no tenets, no opinions. He acknowledged that he was an instrument of war. He acknowledged that this was an age where such instruments were necessary. How many battlefields has he passed through? He could see no value in trying to sum up such experience with some complex, ever-shifting philosophy. There were those who would wage war, and those who would try to end it, and tools were necessary for both of those ends. That was all the justification a soldier required. Oh boy, more flashbacks, here we go. Warriors fought and they died. There was no room for anything resembling a normal life. That's who they were. Demons, not men. To Siam, to this mercenary, this was a simple fact. Oh good, no. I was afraid that we're going to go into another flashback. I really want to see what's going to happen. His watch showed that 6 minutes had passed. 24 minutes to go. By then they would all know if they had failed or succeeded. It was too long and yet too short. A gulf of time for him to fill with his own rusting memories. He had been born into an age of enduring conflict. Here we go. The game knew what I was fucking saying. The first Arab-Israeli War. In response to the Israeli Declaration of Independence of 1948, the five nations of Lebanon, Syria, Transjordan, Iraq, and Egypt, later joined by Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Morocco, declared war and marched on Palestine. Armistice agreements were signed in 1949, with the ultimately triumphant Israel taking control of most of Palestine. 1948, the first Arab-Israeli war, which started with the declaration of establishment of the State of Israel. Over 800,000 displaced Arab refugees. A conflict between those who had formed their own nation at the end of their wandering and those who would now never be able to return to those lands. 1956. The tripartite aggression over the Suez Canal. In 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser declared the nationalization of the Suez Canal, Opposing this move, the United Kingdom and France backed Israel in an invasion of the Sinai Peninsula, leading to a violent conflict with Egypt. In 1957, the United States and Soviet Union intervened, arranging a ceasefire. Any attempts at negotiation or diplomacy were ineffective. The Middle Eastern hegemonies shifted into the hands of two nations, further deepening the turmoil. And then 1964. The Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed to retake its founder's rightful homeland, his homeland. Palestinian Liberation Organization, an umbrella organization with the goal of the liberation of Palestine from Israeli control. Abbreviated PLO, after Yasser Arafat, founder of the PLO's dominating faction, Fatah, became chairman. The organization took on the de facto role of the Palestinian government in exile. The Oslo Accords of 1993 saw a government centralized into the interim Palestinian National Authority. Following the death of Arafat in 2004, Mahmoud Abbas assumed the position of chairman of the PLO, as well as the president of the Palestinian National Authority. The peace process still ongoing. Four years prior, he had been born to a region west of the Jordan River. Like the other young men of faith who had thrown themselves into the liberation movement, he too had chosen a path of belief. But his beliefs were too rigid, too severe. He did not know value or compromise. He did not know or value compromise, sorry. He learned to focus on what he could accomplish as a soldier, and strove to become one of the elite in order to end the fighting as soon as possible. He believed that this was the very best that he could do. The organization he joined in his teens was small, but had affiliated itself with the PLO and then joined up with Colonel Gaddafi's. My God, so much history. Recent history, especially. Jeez. Wow, that name rings some bells of recent years, which had provided its members the necessary soldier's education. The former supreme leader of Libya, seizing power of 1969 coup d'etat, is perhaps best known for his radical anti-Western rhetoric during the 1970s and 80s. Well, in 2009, maybe he was best known for that. Here we go. As rumored backing of various terrorist groups. In the latter part of his life, his relationship with the West gradually improved. He played a leadership role in the formation of the African Union, AU, in 2002, becoming its chairman in 2009. Gaddafi was deposed and killed in 2011 by rebel forces in the Libyan civil war. Infighting, however, gradually reduced the organization's numbers. He'd used the 82 Lebanon War as an opportunity to temporarily distance himself from the PLO, and had thrown himself instead into fighting in Afghanistan. My, do these characters have fleshed out backstories for something that's like a side thing. Jesus Louises Creases. Lebanon War. 1982 war in which Israeli forces invaded the neighboring country of Lebanon to retaliate against PLO forces present there. PLO leadership moved to Tunisia, and a multinational force was installed in Lebanon, with the United States providing its core constituents. That was when he'd acquired the name Siam. He had acted as a military instructor for Islamic volunteer soldiers from Thailand. His students had bestowed upon him the former name of their kingdom. When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979, Muslims from all over the world joined up as volunteer soldiers to fight the Soviets in the name of jihad. After the withdrawal of Soviet forces, these volunteer soldiers did not completely lose ties with one another. some of them went on to form international networks such as Al-Qaeda. A new name. But when he accepted this new moniker, something that represented something other than himself, he had ceased to be the young man who'd sacrificed himself for his ideals. At the request of some former acquaintances, he'd returned to the PLO in 1990. Yet again, infighting had brought the organization to the brink of collapse, and he'd been tasked with helping to restructure it. It was around then he'd reached his current standing. The sub-organization that he belonged to was in dire financial straits, and so to keep it solvent, its members had begun taking on mercenary contracts for covert ops from the PLO and Islamic extremist groups that were former affiliates. He'd been a soldier for over 30 years. For all that time, he had fought and he had survived. The fighting had honed him on every level. Much of it had been purely mercenary, to secure funding to keep his organization afloat, but he recognized that as being meaningful in its own way. We know that this is the author of Fate who wrote this, and we know how much he loves history. Like, we know, because of just what the Fate series is. Like, it does, however, feel extremely disconnected at this point from, like, you'd never believe I'm reading something related to 428 Shibuya Scramble in this story here. But yeah, this author, like, from we know with the Fate series, definitely you can see how much he loves history. Much of it had been purely mercenary to secure funding to keep his organization afloat, but he recognized that as being meaningful in its own way. In order to tip the balance in the fighting within their own country, his compatriots needed to encourage other nations to go for each other's throats. Accepting this as the evil that it was, they continued to wield the hammer of justice. Eventually he had seen so much that he no longer felt the evil, and then he no longer even felt the justice. Ever the consummate soldier, he was too grounded in harsh reality to deceive himself with flowery words or abstract ideals. Everything that he truly understood he'd come to realize while on the battlefield. And one thing had become completely clear. The fighting that raged through his homeland would not end during the lifetimes of his generation. His own existence was nothing more than a blip on this battle radar, a tiny detail in the midst of something vastly larger than himself. Bit by bit, his once rigid faith gave way to something more nihilistic. Times changed, and so did values at some point. The human heart went on to change as well. His changed convictions left him alienated, and he reformed himself into a solitary soldier. He longed for battle, yet felt no commitment to any particular conflict. And so, despite his legendary record in uniform, he became a mercenary, outside the military establishment. I feel like this would be like, without the flashbacks, this would be like maybe a third as long as it would be. His compatriots began to view him as nothing but a warmonger who fought without beliefs, and they were not so far from wrong. No longer a true partisan of any cause, what he was much harder to define. Ultimately, he was a jack of all trades. Recruit training, guarding VPs, intelligence operations, subversive activities, he tackled them all. One thing led to another until he arrived at the last major job he'd undertaken as a soldier. theater was the Iraq War. There was a battle on the fringes, unrelated to the main conflict itself. And there he found a girl who had lost everything. Her kin and community, all victims of collateral damage. Here we go. Now here's the part that matters. The tragedy that struck her had unfolded in a single day. When Siam found her, a chance discovery as he was making his way through the area, it was a miracle that she was even breathing. According to reports, the entire population of the village had been annihilated. Friend or foe, there were no possible survivors. And yet, Siam had found one. He had taken on this war, and that included aiding any civilians once the fighting was over. Yeah. Oh, that's totally true, Ji-chan. The anime story feels more like something that would be realistic, and the real life, the one told with real life pictures, feels like way more like an anime. Jeez. Yeah, this feels more like something from Tom Clancy novels or Call of Duty, rather than something that anime would talk about. He had taken on this war, and that included aiding any civilians once the fighting was over. Even if he knew it was someone unlikely to last much longer than another day. And yet, in defiance of his expectations, the girl clung desperately to life. She pulled herself back from the brink of death, pieced her broken psyche back together, and declared that she wanted to live. Easier said than done. This child had no relatives, and all records of her family had been wiped out. In order for her to live, she would need to be reborn as a soldier. I just saw the little save icon.
There probably isn't anyone around with the patience to train a complete novice. I wasn't qualified, but I wound up sticking with you.
Perhaps because something fascinated him about this new responsibility, he took on the task. To say that the girl wasn't soldier material would have been an understatement. On a scale of 1 to 10, she was less than a 0. Really? Damn. How did she improve so much? Her personality was an issue. She was whimsical, unable to keep her emotions in check, and incapable of working as part of a cohesive unit. Her general knowledge and awareness of local customs were also sadly lacking. She could read and write, but there was something fundamentally broken about how she processed information. She called the sun blue. Wow. Really? I guess she's colorblind in a way or something. At first, Siam figured that she'd simply been taught the word blue to refer to what most people acknowledge as yellow. It wasn't long before he was disabused of this notion. The girl wasn't wrong, everyone else was. The things she said weren't untrue from her perspective. Oh yeah, she has like this weird power, like to see like auras or something. To her, the sun did look blue. She was still able to distinguish the color yellow from the color blue, same as anyone else. But she also had a very peculiar condition. Very rare, but known to humankind for centuries. Synesthesia. Oh, wow. Interesting. Huh. She was just like us, except in how she perceived the world. Words would come to her as shapes, sounds as smells, moods as colors. Oh, wow. So She can like tell someone's mood, like someone's emotions. So she's like an empath, I guess. Damn. Pretty badass. It isolated her within her own village and thereby saved her life. That isolation was also why she had no initial aptitude for soldiering. She struggled to work within an organization, as those around her struggled to understand how she operated in a group environment. Siam had no doubt that she was the only soldier he'd ever trained who could make eye contact with another person and instantly understand where they fell short and what she could do to make up for it. Running her in a standard squad was almost impossibly difficult. Siam soon found that he often needed to give his new novice his undivided attention.
You still afraid of guns?
In terms of trained reactions and physical skills, there was nothing more that he could teach her. She'd mastered shooting and all the fundamentals of his standard physical training. Well, that's a pretty disturbing image. And yet she was still an astoundingly timid girl. Afraid of the battlefield, afraid of guns, afraid of the trigger. She even seemed afraid of loading a magazine. Every day, Siam found himself thinking,
She wasn't cut out for this.
but every day she threw herself back into the training, facing all the things she feared. Revenge, he began to suspect. No doubt she wanted the ability to fight so that she could strike back at the nameless bunch who had taken her village and her family away from her.
She wants to be like me.
Siam thought. She wanted to kill. No, she wanted the strength to be able to kill and then immediately to put that killing behind her.
その必要はない。死が怖いのはお前が安全を知っているからだ。
You don't have to be afraid of guns, you know. You fear death because you know it's safety.
恐怖は残しておけ。過去は克服しなければならないが、この世には安全があることも忘れてはならない。
Leave the fear behind. You need to conquer your past. But you also can't forget that safety does exist in this world.
She was still a respectable human being, not a soldier. He and she were cut from different cloth. Realizing that made him wonder if there was anything he could truly teach her.
当たり前のことを守れ。射撃の基本はそれだけだ。有効射程外からは撃つな。先に引き金を引け。相手から当たらない場所から当てろ。
Sharpshooting's all about fundamentals,
He said.
Fire only at targets within range. Fire from cover. Fire first.
以上だ。覚えるのは簡単だが行うのは難しい。自分なりに工夫しろ。それともう一つ。これは覚えるのも行うのも簡単だ。
That's it. Easy to remember, but hard to pull off. Make it your own. Oh, and one more thing.
交戦したのなら必ず相手の息の根は止めておけ。
If you do get into a gunfight, make sure the other guy never gets back up again. There's a certain Yakuza who never learned that lesson.
She wanted it, and that much was clear. And while she might never make much of a rank-and-file soldier, there were better things for her to do than learn regulations and squad tactics. She could survive best on her own. Away from the conventional battlefield, she began to achieve startling results on extreme solo missions. The more skilled her opponent, the more she rose to the challenge. She was a natural-born duelist. It's time to No, that wasn't quite right. The girl was an assassin. And this was her creed. Siam had to admit that she improved each and every day. The almost daily change of pace was good for him too as a teacher. The only problem was the source of her motivation.
お前はまだ復讐を考えているな。
You're still thinking about revenge, aren't you?
She fell into her typical sullen silence, a scolded child, unwilling to tell a lie. Inwardly, Siam acknowledged his misstep in judgment. I could see Caanan with a jewel disc, easily. She might have the makings of the perfect assassin, but the assassin's life would never be a good fit for her.
それはいい。復讐は忘れるな。
Damn, I could totally see how this fits together with her and Maria. Like, Maria reminds her of the life that she truly wants. Oh my god, wow, that is so adorable.
Good,
he said.
Hold on to your vengeance.
一族の恥辱は注げ。
Repay the insult.
やるべきことの一つであって、すべてではない。
Repay the insult to your people, but don't stop there. You're capable of much, much more.
同じことをするだけの機会にはなるな。憎悪に身を任せるのはたやすいが、それでは生きる屍になる。
This guy sounds a little bit like Kiryu, doesn't he? I don't know, the voice actor sounds very similar to me.
Don't become a machine, stuck repeating the same motions. Take the easy way out. Give yourself over to hatred. You'll die inside.
Maybe there were no more physical skills to teach her, but he still needed to give the girl the mental training a warrior required to survive.
覚えておけ。憎しみに憎しみで当たっては意味がない。
Remember this, Caanan. Hatred for its own sake is meaningless.
カナン。憎しみには義務で当たらなければ救われない。
If your hatred isn't tempered by a sense of duty, you will be lost.
That lesson, more an admonishment, was the one thing he'd held on to in the wake of his own disillusionment. His heart bore scars that would never heal. Revenge was a prize without reward, claiming it could break you if your heart was made of anything less than steel. And so he told her to harden her heart into something that could not be broken. He only hoped it was enough. Even steel wore away over time, bit by bit. A year had passed since then. A year that felt like a day. Now one thing in particular rose in his mind. Before this job, for perhaps the first time ever, Caanan had asked him for something. She wanted a tattoo just like his. He'd had no choice but to agree. There had still been one day to go before the job, so they'd gotten it done on location before boarding the train. That tattoo, a snake, represented bad luck and loneliness to the locals. She didn't care. She saw in it a kindred spirit, a creature driven by the same nothingness that fueled herself in Siam. The timid girl and the black snake. If he gave himself over to sentiment, he might have said that the black snake looked somewhat uncomfortable there, coiled on this arm of the girl bent on survival. Here we go, back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. Caanan and Sadaka slithered silently along the underside of the train, suspended just above the ties hurtling past beneath them. The slightest mistake and whoever made it would instantly be reduced to an unrecognizable smear of meat. Hey, Sadaka hissed. Wow, pick up the pace. She was taking point. Caanan silently complied. She concealed her foul mood. Not so well that Sadaka couldn't see it. Clearly, she didn't like their chosen route. Would you have preferred the roof? Sadaka asked. Caanan rolled her eyes. The roof is death. But you did lie. This is no circus. Sadaka let out an appreciative chuckle. Had the little princess been expecting some more elegant means of reaching their target? If this doesn't suit you, I'd guess you'll just have to play King Kong next. You like the Empire State Building, yeah? I don't know what you're talking about, Caanan said. But you're making fun of me, aren't you? Of course. Shooting the breeze like this is so delightful. Normal small talk is just a bother. But when you can mouth off in a situation like this, you'll never be bored. Jeez. Caanan furrowed her brow. She might not ever find it in herself to like Sadaka, but it did seem like they shared a very quirky sense of humor. The doors to the freight car were shut with combination locks. It seemed like an outdated technology for protecting the classified material the car was carrying. Evidently, the enemy had been forced to make use of what they had available. Sadaka quickly punched in a numerical sequence and the lock opened. She had acquired the code sequence before arriving on the train. Due diligence for a code breaker. What? That's their security? Sadaka said as they stepped into the car. I was expecting a crowd inside. Either they're really confident or complete idiots. The break-in had been disappointingly easy. They surveyed the freight car's interior, still anticipating a further challenge. The space was divided into two compartments. One was sealed and held the item they were after, while the other, in which they now stood, housed a console room for managing the first. They gotta solve a puzzle. Can you see it through? You done? Okay, good. Can you see it through the observation window? Sadaka said. That's what we're after in that case there. The object itself is small. It was made at Fort Detrick. Apparently Mossad struck a deal with the U.S. Biological Warfare Experimentation Unit deployed in Iraq and got them to hand it over to the Israelis. God, this is like, I really hope they don't have to solve some kind of freaking puzzle that requires knowledge of the zodiac, like which zodiac sign is at which month and which day. Son of a fucking bitch. That was just like a crazy hard puzzle out of nowhere. In Ultra Despair Girls. God. A United States Army installation in Frederick, Maryland. The 5 square kilometer grounds are dotted with various biological and medical research and development facilities. The name is sometimes used to refer specifically to the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, USA MRID, a key institution in U.S. efforts to protect against naturally occurring microbes and diseases as well as biological weapons.
話によると、最終的にはケース台のものに収納されたということだが。
Oh my god, Zarvegas, do not tempt the game. Jump to Stanley to find the needed information. Hilarious, Zarvegas. Fucking hilarious. Based on what I was told, it'll be in something the size of a briefcase.
じゃあ、このドアを壊して、あのケースも壊す?
Caanan mused. So we just bust open the door down and smash open the case.
壊さないよう私が呼びつけられたんだが。
I was advised not to break anything. Except codes. Codebreaker.
こいつを運び込んだスタッフのように、さも普通に中に入り、ケースを開け、誰に咎められることもなく運び出すのが理想だ。
So we go in like we belong here, open the case, and get out before anyone's the wiser.
ああ、お前は休んでいていい。そっちの仕事は護衛がいた時の梅雨払いだからな。ここからは私の領分だ。
You just sit tight. You're part of the job as soon as there be guards. The rest of this is my area of expertise.
領分って。そこのコンソール使えるの?
You can work that console.
いや、持参している。しかしなんだな。予想以上に頭が痛い。この無造作に放り出されたケーブル、何の笑い話だ。どうやって入るか楽しみにしていた私がバカみたいだ。どこぞのネットカフェかここは。
Okay, that's a lot of dialogue for 2 sentences. I brought my own, but what a mess. Sadaka scowled at the slapdash array of electronics. Oh, I see. It did it ahead. I see. Talk about a headache. Look at all these exposed cables. Is this someone's idea of a joke? I was looking forward to a challenge, but this... Oh, this is low-budget internet cafe level. Sadaka grumbled as she hooked up her laptop. The security here was laughable, even considering how much of a rush the enemy had been in to arrange the weapon transfer. It looked like she'd need to do a little more than input the password the Sheik had given her into the terminal.
まったく、なんて危機感のなさだ。信じられない。それでもイスラエルの人間か?
It's like they're not worried about counterintelligence at all. Are the Israelis seriously this lax?
おい、名誉のために言っておくが、イスラエルの IT 技術者は優秀なんだぜ。
You
だ
know...
ってこんなバカどもと取引するんだ、米軍は。まさか同じレベルのアホなのか?
You know, Israeli IT engineers are supposed to be better than this. How could this little of an idiot strike a deal with the U.S. military? Or are both sides this dim-witted? Or am I just greatly underestimating what's going on here?
うるさいな。お前ペンティアム M とか大好きだろ。
Come now, Caanan murmured. You like the Pentium M, don't you? I remember the Pentium. Y'all remember the Pentium series? Yeah. When the Pentium 3, 4, 5, like, I remember when the very first Pentium was released. A CPU released by the Intel Corporation, originally developed in Israel. Its design focused on power conservation for use in laptop computers. Its compact size and brand appeal making it popular in many countries, including Japan. Although Japan has really nothing to do with this side story here, but...
嫌いなものか?
How could I not?
イスラエルの技術者は世界で一番クールだ.
Israeli engineers are the coolest. I had no idea Alphard was such a nerd. Caanan frowned. She might be loath to admit it, but their opinions really were very similar. Is this gonna be some, like, crazy-ass love triangle? The PC booted up. Sadaka logged into the terminal and entered the password. She worked with a skill and alacrity that would have made any codebreaker proud.
ハッキングなんてものは参加した時点で終わっているようなものだ。その場で暗号を破るなんて職業がまかり通ったのは大昔の話でね。
By the time you get to the hacking stage, the job is practically over, she said. The days of having to decrypt things on site are largely in the past.
端的に言って、ソーシャルハッキングに勝るセキュリティ解除はない。
Yeah, I've read about that, yeah. Quite frankly, there's no better way to break through security than social hacking.
ソーシャルハッキングってなんだ？
Social hacking? Caanan asked. What's that? You know, if you leave a random USB out there somewhere, and then some dim-witted idiot will just go,
Oh, look at this USB! A free one! I better take it home and plug it into my computer.
and then bam! Immediate access to all their data. Oh my god. True simplicity.
ああ、探偵のようなものだよ。
It's sort of like detective work.
PC の知識、プログラムテクニック以外の手段で情報を手に入れることだ。セキュリティに関して一番詳しいのは当事者だからな。交渉、内定、果てはゴミ漁りまでやる。
Getting information in ways other than relying on computer know-how and programming techniques. Nobody knows more about the security of a site than the people responsible for it. So you negotiate with them, run surveillance on them, yada yada ipso fatso, even root through their trash. Sadaka explained.
今回こいつのセキュリティに関わっていたのは3人だけだったからな。まあ楽な方だ。
There are only 3 people involved with security on this job, so it was a breeze.
通常このレベルの機密なら10人以上の関係者全員からキーを取らないと難しい。と、おい、さっきのあれよこせ。口寂しくなってきた。
Normally, for something with this level of secrecy, I'd need keys from 10 or more people. And, hey, let me have one of those sugar things. I need something to put in my mouth. Caanan frowned but handed her a sugar stick. No, interesting.
じゃあ暗号破りっていうのは名前だけ？私みたいにその場で答えだけ探すってことじゃないの？
So then why do they call you a code breaker? Caanan asked. Aren't you basically just an on-site troubleshooter like me?
何の話だそれは。
Huh? Whatever are you talking about? Sadaka asked.
私が言っているのは単に人間の方がハックしやすいって話だ。そりゃ答えそのものを手に入れるのが理想だが、まずありえない。
My point is simply that people are easier to hack. You know, get to know someone, just say they like the same things that they do a little bit of research, and bada bing bada boom, they think you're their best friend. Oh, but you wouldn't know about that, would you? She continued working at the keyboard as she spoke. Ideally, that's how you get all of what you need, but that's not doable in practice.
それにソーシャルハッキングも数値を埋める行為だぞ。調べ上げた感情や性格、経歴を数値化しないと解は得られない。
Besides, social hacking is all about plugging in numbers too. You're just wasting your time researching someone's emotions, personality, history if you don't find a way to turn the results into numerical form.
その後、手に入れた情報を整理し、公理に基づいてパスコードを導き出す。
When you're done, you arrange the info you've gotten, and the way to derive, say, a password becomes self-evident. She'd unlocked the 3rd layer of security as she spoke. There was the access password and infrared scanner lock, and then a lock linked up to the wheels of the train that prevented the compartment door from being opened while the train was in motion.
よし、終わりだ。
Alrighty then. That's done, she said.
こいつはまだ試作品だからな。一研究員の個人名でログインできる。
See, the thing we're after is still a prototype, so I can log in under one of the researchers' names.
あとは研究リーダーのアカウントで管理者権限を。
Then I can use the research lead's account to give me admin rights and...
何？
Oh, what the...
どうしたの？
Is something the matter? Caanan asked.
パスコードが変えられている。お手上げだ。優先順位の高いものから打ち込んだが、3つとも外れた。
They've changed the passcode. I tried the 3 highest priority ones I had, but none of them worked. Fuckberries.
じゃあこの1時間後っていうのは？
What does this mean here? 1 hour remaining. Caanan asked. What the fuck do you think it means?
1時間、パスコード入力を拒否されている。
It means passcode input has been locked out for another hour.
残った手持ちのコードに正解があるとしても、入力そのものができなくなった。
Even if any of the other passwords I have are valid, the system won't even let me enter them anymore. I thought you said this was going to be easy. Well, I thought wrong. Okay? I'm not perfect. They were running out of time. Already 15 minutes had passed since they begun the operation. Allowing for 5 minutes to get back to Siam's car, they only had 10 minutes or so left to work.
くそ。積み込む前に気まぐれでコードを変えたな。管理がずさんなら予定もずさんか。聞いてないぞそんな話は。
They up and changed the codes before loading. Damn it! I should have known they'd mess up their update schedule along with everything else. Classic.
珍しく感情的だね。で、他に方法は？
Is there anything else we can try?
そうだな。パスによるアクセスはできない。
Maybe. Sadaka said. Since we can't get access with the passcode.
となると、ロックを解除する信号を直接送るしかないが、それこそありえない。
We could try sending the unlock sequence directly to the lock itself. No, that's impossible.
信号自体は暗号化された上でプログラムに収納されているが、その数値から信号を拾い上げるのは不可能だ。
The sequence itself is encrypted and stored in a program, so there's no way for us to get it.
それ、プログラム自体は開けられる？
Caanan murmured. Can you open the program itself?
可能だが、意味がない。
I can, but there wouldn't be any point.
いいから、面白そうだし、ちょっと変わってよ。
Humor me. I'm curious. Switch places with me real quick.
わかったか。この数値の中から信号を拾い上げるのは不可能だ。
Oh yeah, because of her superpower here,
時間さ
she
え
can
あれ
do
ば
it.
可能だが、それも数日の作業で。
Don't you get it? You can't get the sequence from the string of numbers in there. Well, we could if we had the time, but that'd be days of work and...
ああ、信号ってきっとこれだ。
Yep. This must be the sequence here, Caanan said.
189A C45558883122B C367AB29
189AC4555893E5883112BC367AB29.
これでやってみて。
Give that a try. Holy fuckaroonies, what kind of monster are you?
だと。
The hell?
当たった？当たりならあの中のものは私のだけど。
Did that work? If it did, I get to have what's inside. Sadaka swallowed wordlessly. She should have been happy. The first stage of her job was finished after all. Still.
共感覚。お前がそう呼ばれる人間なのは資料で読んだ。今のは、つまりそういうことか。
Sinus fucking Thesia, she said. I read about it in the report. Is that how you did that just now?
別に珍しいものじゃない。単に文字に色がついて見えるだけの話。目とか耳とかが一緒なだけだよ。
It's just a different way of understanding things. I can see what colors the numbers and letters are.
それで済ませる話か。
That's your explanation.
私の認識が甘かったようだ。今のお前の行為は直感だけに頼ったものだな。
You just see things differently. You're telling me that you intuited the code just by seeing how the numbers looked. Synesthesia. Curious condition found in people all over the world to varying degrees. Also defined as the tendency to experience a stimulation of one sense with additional perceptions in one or more other senses. Human beings have 5 senses: sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell. People who process 2 or more of these individual senses simultaneously are known as synesthetes. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Letters could have colors. Sounds might have shapes. A word might taste sweet or sour. I think that's so fucking cool. Seriously. I know that synesthesia is a real thing, although they're enhancing it to like superpower, like Daredevil blind sight levels here. There were many variations, each a unique way to perceive the world. The condition was not generally an impairment. The letter's color could have real meaning. There's a reason that each sound has a particular shape. Synesthetes picked up on this additional sensory information not intellectually, but intuitively. It went beyond vision and hearing simply working as a combined sense. It created a new form of perception in its own right. The senses themselves didn't literally fuse into one, of course. For a synesthete, the 5 senses could complement each other reciprocally. For instance, visual information might also be processed as sound, and then combined with direct auditory input. Visual cues that were also seen through the other senses could radically increase the seer's ability to comprehend what they were perceiving. A typical image on a page serves as a good example. The ordinary person perceives such an image solely through the sense of sight. Single input, single level of perception. A synesthete, however, might perceive the same image with one or more additional senses as well. Information obtained this way is analyzed by the brain, secondary perceptions complementing and deepening the information provided by the primary sense. The human brain, however, cannot fully grasp such perceptions on a logical level. In the end, the beneficiary of such experiences simply knows what has been perceived without knowing the reason why. It is akin to the experiences of a newborn child. The child has not yet learned language, and so it struggles to grasp its mother's intent when she speaks. An entity without intellect exerts all of its physical self to learn of its surroundings. The nascent brain has not yet separated the language cortex and visual cortex. In an infant, both function as the same thing. Once those features do become separate, knowledge as we know it first comes into play. The organization of knowledge in different regions of the cerebral cortex efficiently reduces certain burdens on the brain to the cost of reducing sensory acuity. Okay. Seeing the big picture, understanding the details simply by feeling. Not following an ordered thought process, but arriving at its conclusion in a single step. Such possibilities might include the meaning of a sequence of digits that appears meaningless at first glance. For one who did not know intellectually what part of a tree was the leaves and which part was the trunk, it would still be possible to tell them apart based on their shape, on their different colors, their different shapes. The simplification of things, condensation of stories, until instinctually understanding solutions without having to follow some process of derivation. This was how a synesthete like Caanan perceived the world.
それを表現する言葉を持たなくても違う表現、色や形でそれが何であるかを読み取れると。
So even if you don't know what some code or message is trying to express, the colors or shapes will let you interpret it anyway, Sadaka asked.
文章全体を見ればどれが必要なものでどれが不要なものかぐらいはわかる。
Yeah, it's like how when you look at a whole sentence, you can sort of tell which parts are important and which parts aren't. If the text as a whole contains some story, if the programmer's intent was there in the cipher, she could pick up on it in those colors and flavors, feel the touch of that meaning on her skin. Because of her very nature, Caanan could look at a sequence of unknown information and immediately sense which parts were important. She had learned to accept that she couldn't understand the why behind it.
でもこうなったのは2年前からだ。以前は肌触りぐらいしか感じられなかった。
I've only been able to do that since about 2 years ago, though, she said. Before that, I could only feel things in my skin.
その今じゃ音とか匂いも同じように感じ取るから前よりは見えるようになったけど。
But now I can do the same with sounds and smells, which lets me see better than before.
共感覚は先天的なものだというからな。
Well, they say synesthesia is something you're born with. Sadaka said.
お前の場合、何らかの後遺症で共感覚が強くなったのか。
So did some kind of accident or treatment make yours stronger?
それはつまり
You know, such as... Her faculties hadn't improved through random happenstance. Perhaps when she was on the brink of death, some of her bodily function had broken in order to keep her alive, and somehow changed while she recovered.
皮膚感覚の優れた生き物は波で周囲の情報を測るというが、お前の感覚はそれに近いと。
They say creatures with unusual tactile acuity pick up information on their surroundings through waves. Are your perceptions something like that?
近いのかな。そんなのは知らないけど、その気になれば周りぐらいは見て取れる。
Sort of. Maybe? I'm not really sure. But I can see my surroundings almost as if they're made of waves when I want to.
では、今私が何を
Yep,
している
here we
かわかる
go.
か？
Here we go. So then, you can tell what I'm doing now? Sadaka asked.
肩をすくめているのが匂いで見える。
Yeah, I can see the scent of you shrugging your shoulders. I can see the scent, Sadaka thought. So that's what using your whole body to perceive things is like. Incredible. The girl had eyes pointing in every direction. She was a veritable sensory prodigy. She had no blind spots. Her ears and nose, her tactile sensations, saw on every side at once. Damn, she's a freaking Hyuga.
確固たる直感。
That is quite a gift you have, Sadaka said.
人間が知識という武器の代わりに失った第六感という才能。
Like a sixth sense the rest of us lost somewhere along the way in exchange for intellect. Maybe it wasn't so remarkable after all. Something all human creatures had once possessed, an early gift, taken away from them by the serpent of primal knowledge. Progress, not regression, had cost mankind this capacity capability. Sometimes true evolution necessitated the loss of some superior power in order for a species to thrive. Humans had grown more complex through language, culture, and thought, the only creatures on Earth to distance themselves from their animal nature. And what was it they had lost? The trick of knowing only answers at a look? To receive an answer without thinking. That was nothing more than the abandonment of thought.
Ah, まるで原始人だ。
You're a primitive, basically. Sadaka smirked inwardly at the thought. The girl was such a simple creature. No wonder Siam's edge had dulled from having to deal with this.
Sadaka, status.
The sudden sound of the radio snapped her back to attention. They had under 5 minutes left to go.
問題ない。少しばかり予定が狂ったが、お嬢さんのおかげで解決した。
No problems. Things went a little bit awry, but the young lady here managed to resolve it.
そうか、急げ。こちらも雲行きが怪しい。護衛による乗客晒しが始まった。スパイ容疑だそうだ。引き延ばせて2分だぞ。
Roger that. Try to hurry. The guards have started harassing people here. Something about a spy. We've got 2 minutes, tops.
こっちではいつものことだよ。
Same as ever, then, Sadaka replied.
了解。リンチが始まる前には戻る。
We'll be back before the firing squad lines up.
やはり携帯できる形だったな。
She stared at the briefcase-like container in the open compartment. It really is portable, then.
中に物があるのは端末から確認済みだ。お嬢さん、かさばるがそのケースごと運んでくれ。
I've already confirmed the contents via the terminal. I know it's unwieldy, but would you mind carrying that case, young lady?
ああ、決して開けるなよ。万が一ということもある。下手をすれば、ここら一体死の土地だ。
Is it the UA virus? And whatever you do, do not open it. No matter what. One misstep and every living thing for miles around dies.
なんだって。
She's like, wait, what? Caanan said.
シャム、聞き忘れてた。今回の獲物は何？
Siam, she radioed. I forgot to ask, what are we acquiring here?
現在最も小さく凶悪な兵器の一つだ。
One of the smallest, most sinister weapons in the world.
There was a brief silence, but Caanan already knew what his words implied. A chill ran up her spine. She could feel the latent threat before her now.
シャム、これは。
Siam, this is...
米国疾病予防管理センター格付け最優先リスクグループ4
A virus, just designated risk group 4 by the American CDC. Their highest risk rating.
Yep. Abbreviation for Center for Disease Control and Prevention. A multidisciplinary research institution under the jurisdiction of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, it is known as one of the world's foremost organizations in the field of virus and infectious agent research.
秘密裏に散布感染実験を行い性能を立証した致死性ウイルスその遺伝子を組み換え兵器としての運用効率を高めたウーアプロとの奪還が今回の目的だ
Secret experiments were carried out to disseminate and infect people with it in order to demonstrate its lethality. And then its genetic code was tweaked to increase its efficacy as a bioweapon. They called UA Proto.
That was it. That was the name of the fragment of hell that had brought her life to ruin 2 years earlier. UA. A microscopic demon released by mankind. It was the year 2000. A retrovirus awoke in the Drakensberg region out of South Africa. A type of virus that reads genetic data and uses reverse transcriptase in order to copy its own RNA. Put more simply, it uses the cells of other organisms to make copies of itself. Because the retrovirus genome is made of RNA, retroviruses are thought to be more unstable and prone to sudden mutations than DNA virus. Yep. Oh boy. A mountain range in South Africa that takes its name from the Afrikaans word for the Mountain of Dragons. Part of the range forms the national border of the Kingdom of Lesotho. Isn't that country that's like completely surrounded by another country? I don't think I've ever seen something like that. That, like, when I was looking at the map of the world as a little kid, that always weirded me the fuck out. It's like the highest peak at 3842 meters is the Bana Notalenya, which means beautiful little mountain in the Sothoso language. Oh, and that's, oh wow. Oh my god, Chichan, that's right. That means Maria's father is partially responsible for killing her family. Oh my god. Deforestation carried out in the name of advancing national development unleashed the pathogen upon the land, rapidly infecting a local village. The virus's combination of a high lethality rate and a high infection rate wiped out the entire village in a matter of days. The South African government carried out radical sterilization procedures, burning down the forest in a several kilometer radius. Luckily, the virus was still vulnerable and the sterilization effort proved successful. Until 3 years later, when agents from another nation collected samples of the virus from the same woodlands. Again, research on military applications. God damn it. They improved the virus and successfully created a weaponized prototype. The demon awoke. They chose the village already engulfed in the flames of war as a test site. Under cover of the conflict in Iraq, the weapon makers carried out the experiment. The virus was unleashed and the village vanished. Oh my god. Jeez. Fucking hell. This is like Umbrella Corporation levels of evil here. The lethality rate was over 90%. The infection rate and survivability of the pathogen both exceptionally high. This was the tiny demon, invisible to the naked eye, that had taken everything from the young girl called Caanan. After that, there were rumors of further development. The improved form of the virus was given the name UA, and the last of the prototype that had destroyed the nameless Middle Eastern village was frozen. Yes, frozen. Not disposed of, not eradicated. The weapon was difficult to use. Those who possessed it still felt that there was value even in the inferior prototype. Furthermore, it represented a great deal of research money, which meant whoever it might be, should a buyer emerge, they would sell. Jesus Christ! My God! Serious, the absolute insane level of evil we're dealing with here. Holy fuck. Caanan had no words. Why was this thing here now? She felt nothing. No grief, rage, or despair. So is Caanan immune to the virus then? She simply thought calmly. Someone who's still alive who is willing to use this weapon. That includes the soldiers who are there to protect it.
Ojo-san.
Hey, young lady.
分かってる。今はケースをシャムに届ける。
I know. Right now we need to get this case to Siam. She spoke. She moved mechanically, removing the case from its compartment. Whatever her free will, she'd possessed the moment before it vanished. Sadaka watched her, satisfied. Then both girls stiffened with alarm. Of course, every heist movie's gotta end like this. A message appeared on the monitor. Case connection broken. Security breach possible. If disconnection is unresolved after 60 seconds, alert broadcast will commence. Thank you. Have a nice day.
警報は解除したんじゃないのか
Yep, she didn't disable the alarms on purpose. That's what she was doing before. Oh, well, that's easy, Void Dweller. That's because in real life, the highest biosecurity is level 4. You didn't disable the alarms? Kanan snarled.
文句は後で聞く。今から接続するには間に合わない。シャムに連絡を。
Complain later. We'll never get it reconnected in time. Call Siam now! The call was brief and the conclusion was clear. The parameters of the job had changed. The fight was unavoidable. They would need to strike first.
シャム、私は
Siam, I...
Just listen. I'll neutralize the guards in the rear car. While I do, keep pressure on the ones up front. Once I've secured the rear, I'll give you the signal to fall back.
For the time being, Kanan and Sadaka were trapped. There were 7 hostiles ahead of them and 7 more behind. All the girls could do now was sit up in the freight car to buy themselves time. And yet...
OK みんな黙らせていいんだよね
I think this calls for more aggressive solution.
Kanan, wait!
Oh, Kanan said that. Damn. I think this calls for more aggressive solution. She cut the connection. Her eyes gleamed with menace. This is no time for hesitation. This is time for battle.
一人呆れたな。腕に自信があるのはいいが現実的じゃない。シャムほどとは言わないが近い兵士が7人だぞ。
Damn, the train is quite loud here. Just like in real life. Okay, let's see. Adjusting the volume level. You alone? Sadaka was incredulous. Are you out of your mind? Having confidence in your skills is one thing, but be realistic. There are 7 soldiers out there. To defeat them all, you need to be some kind of crazy anime-level super soldier.
分かっているでもそいつらはシャムじゃない
I know that. But these guys aren't as good as Siam. Kanan was all action. There was no room for emotion. She'd analyzed her problem and now she was gonna solve it.
勝手に死なれるのは困る。お前は組織にとって貴重なサンプルなんだが。
I can't have you
それ
die.
も枝葉の話か。
Okay. I can't have you dying on me, Sadaka said. You're a very, very valuable asset to this organization and... Oh, never mind. It was clear that conversation wasn't going to be a thing right now. The gleam in Kanan's eyes was that of a beast on the hunt.
ケースをこちらにシャムに届ける。
Give me the case. I'll get it to Siam.
奴との連携は慣れているからな。うまく協議してさっさと終わらせるさ。
Oh, no, that's... Give me the case. I'll get it to Siam. I'm used to working with him. If we can catch the guards in a pincer attack, we can end this quickly. Kanan paused. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, yep. She's lying without lying. She's gotta be. Yep, she's doing that old move. Near as she could see, Sadaka's words didn't have the color of a lie. She was a code breaker forced by the situation to fight.
落とすなよ
Uh-oh.
シャムの邪魔をしないよう気をつけて
Uh-oh. All right, she said. Try not to drop it. And just be careful not to get in Siam's way.
そちらもな。意地を張らず、怖くなったら逃げ出してこい。
Same goes for you. Don't try to prove anything out there. If things get dicey, get out. She could smell combat. The sounds of the wheels and the color of the wind were now both a frigid blue.
こうなるんだったらあんなやついらなかった。
Honestly, Kanan murmured to herself. If it was gonna come to this, what do we even need her for anyway? Seriously. Sadaka's color bothered her far more than that of the forthcoming slaughter, yeah.
Right then.
Siam murmured. The car had devolved into chaos. Guards barked out orders, forbidding anyone to leave their seats. They brandished their guns as they interrogated one traveler after another. The passengers were quaking in fear. While the train was passing through a country, the local government held police authority on board. The soldiers bullying the passengers were Jordanian. Siam could tell, having come aboard during the freight car rearrangement. He counted them among the 14 hostiles. It was only a matter of time before they realized that Kanan and Sadaka were no longer in their seats.
始めるか。
Guess it's time to get started.
Siam let out a sigh of resignation. Oh, Jitan, is it hard for you to hear, or what's going on? Is it hard to hear? Please tell me if I need to adjust volumes of anything.
Hey, you there! Back in your seat!
Sorry.
Now things are getting interesting. Siam walked wordlessly toward the front of the train. It was clear that wherever he went, death would follow. The other passengers scrambled, Shibuya's 428 style, toward the back of the car. No chance for another surprise attack this time. These soldiers were already ready for combat. They pulled the trigger as soon as they had a target. It was 1 against 6 now. If he played this by the book, Siam wouldn't stand a chance. Rule 1 was...
Always shoot from cover.
It was the first lesson he taught his students. Thing was... Damn.
Rules were...
Yeah, he has a gun that can shoot through cover. Damn, wow. Imagine if there were enemies like that in shooter games, which had guns that could shoot through doors and shit. Oh my god. Like, if they knew you were behind cover, they could shoot through it. Not just toss grenades over it and give you a chance to move, but literally shoot through it. Like, seriously. Like, I bet the freaking guards there, it's like,
What? That's so cheap! Fucking hell!
Rules were made to be broken.
so much for playing it by the book. Fastening the top button of on his custom bulletproof coat, he strode forward.
I am a wall. Walls feel no pain. I am the wall of war.
He opened the door. Bullets ricocheted all around. He cased his enemies, assessed their firepower. He might get injured, but he was confident he wouldn't go down. Yeah, he has like a fucking hand cannon right there. Jeez. Right now, there are only 2 guards in the dining car ahead. Time to improvise.
Barging in on dinner like this. Where are my manners?
His innards were hurting, his bones creaked, but he fought to keep his aim steady. He had some internal bleeding, but nothing he couldn't power through.
だがこちらは少々荒っぽくいくぞ。
Sorry, never was housebroken. God, I sure hope I don't run out of one-liners before this train is over.
He took another step forward. Reckless, maybe, but if he didn't deal with these before reinforcements came... Well, no point worrying about that now. Not when there were people left to kill. And just like that, he was down to 3. The worst was yet to come, and his body would bear the brunt of it. Jill Siam was unafraid. Hello, Sean Buster. Welcome to the stream. He was dead from the beginning. My God, this dialogue. A walking corpse. He traded his courage, his passion for an emptiness without fear. Kanan's heart beat in time with the blaring alarm. Her mind was clear. With mechanical coolness, she considered her orders and the time she had available to carry them out. She inferred the positions of her 7 targets, assessed the potential for a strategy that could overcome 7-to-1 odds, and picked her moment. This she did by instinct. Caanan didn't need to think. She let the hard soles of her shoes slap down on the roof of the train car she ran. I hope the train doesn't turn a corner. That should get their attention.
Tough! They're heading for the engine. Cut them off.
The soldiers sprang into action. One of the gangway doors opened. As the leading guard stepped through, a red-clad figure flashed into view under the roof of the adjacent car, her hair streaming on the wind as the train raced along at 80 kilometers an hour. She fired twice. Her trigger control was flawless, aided by the lightweight side and short recoil operation of her Beretta. One instant, 2 targets right between the eyes. Not to mention she has really good aim. Trigger control is a shooter's ability to precisely manipulate a firearm's trigger. Although ostensibly a simple movement, it takes considerable skill to break a shot cleanly and quickly, cleanly and quickly, and reset for a follow-up shot. Good technique is essential for shooting accurately at speed. Oh my God! A type of operating system used in both auto-loading pistols, as well as submachine guns. The mechanism used recoil generated by the weapon's firing to quickly load another round into position. I see. Oh, that's really smart. Let's see. It should have been 3. The strike should have worked. Oh, fuck. But she only got 2. I failed. Fuckberries. She missed her shot at improving her odds 4-to-1 to 4-to-1. Or maybe instead of blaming herself, she owed her enemy some respect. They moved well. At this rate, failure was just a matter of time. She didn't have the firepower to go up against 5 well-armed opponents head-on. At the moment, they were on equal footing, both sides cowering under cover. She'd never been able to pick them off one by one. But sooner or later, the soldiers would realize that they could lay down enough suppressive fire to force her to stay down, while some rushed her position. If she tried to rush them instead, the instant she emerged from behind her seat, she'd fall victim to a hail of bullets. Caanan sighed. For the moment, it was a stalemate. She couldn't see the enemy, and they couldn't see her. But then she heard one of the soldiers. Damn. Are they gonna throw a grenade or something on the train? I don't think so.
No capture necessary. Just eliminate. Cover me.
The guards were using hand signals, but Caanan could perceive them as sounds.
そこ
There. The vibration of the guards' movements, the sound of breathing, the scent of gunpowder. That was enough. They weren't on equal footing anymore. Her 5 heightened senses melded into a single potent awareness. The enemy was on her turn. Now, she has fucking radar! Damn! Were they planning on making like an action video game starring her or something? The angle of the floor and walls, the strength and positioning of the wooden seats, the humidity of the air, subtle cues of friction and impact. There was nothing she could not detect. Her synesthetic perception precisely mapped the interior of the car inside her mind, showing her everything she might need to know. This was no vague impression or rough calculation. She had innate grasp of the exact spatial relationships of everything on this limited battlefield. Damn, she's like fucking Master Chief here. Now all she had to do was wait for the approaching enemy soldier to reveal the last bit of information she needed.
Man down! How the hell is she shooting from there?
She could feel the guard's confusion. Damn, that is some crazy ass superpower. Her snapshot shouldn't have landed. It had caught the advancing soldier right between the eyes. Holy fuck. The survivors were breathing raggedly right now, even their lungs betraying their alarm. The unexpected counterattack brought bewilderment, and then a rush of fear. Still, Caanan knew that if she simply tried the brute force approach and charged the enemy in position, she'd only provoke them into bringing their full firepower to bear. That would limit her options. She needed to modify the parameters of the fight first. Caanan was outgunned. She wasn't going to be able to change that. She might be able to drop one more than with another quick shot. Then she'd only wind up getting overrun. She had one option left. She could abandon cover, go for broke. Yeah. Need to drop 4 targets in the span of a single breath or she'd be done for.
Huh! She can't stop all of us. Well, I've never seen an anime before, but there's no way one little girl could defeat 4 trained soldiers.
Their raspy left been hers or the enemy's. The guard's leader took aim at Caanan's forehead, his finger on the trigger.
Huh?
She picked up the dead man's gun, not for ammo. To carry the plan she envisioned, she knew she needed something more than her Beretta.
What are you doing? Shoot her! Shoot her!
The leader of the guards cried out. The subsequent barrage was too uncontrolled to be called suppressing fire. Gunfire intended to keep the enemy from moving. Frequently used when the opponent is behind cover. It can be an effective means of gaining a tactical advantage by forcing a foe to remain in a given position. I did get that storm in the morning, but I didn't hear the thunder. The 4 men fired wildly, trying in vain to follow Caanan's nigh inhuman movements. Caanan sped away. She could read the ripples of the air, could even predict the movements of the soldiers' muscles, the angle of their gun barrels, the trajectories of their shots. But she knew she couldn't even hope to dodge every bullet. I'm not sure if there are tornadoes in Australia, Void Dweller, but the thing is they have hurricanes, but they don't call them hurricanes, they call them cyclones. Which is weird because in America, we're taught that cyclones are the same thing as tornadoes. But in Australia, they call hurricanes cyclones, so it was very confusing for me. So before the storm could strike, she dived out of the door of the car. Jesus Louises. Oh my god. Absolutely insanitary. Holy shit. She let out a soft sigh as her combined senses became distinct once more. She needed to neutralize 4 targets in the span of a single breath, and that was precisely what she'd done.
ほら見ろ。今更だけど、サーカスっていうのはこういうものだ。
See, look at that, she said. Now that's what I call a circus. She landed with a flourish back inside the train car. She had cleared out all the soldiers stationed in the forward compartment. They'd successfully recovered the payload and wiped out the enemy force. Now her task was to evacuate ASAP. Now that the small fry are gone and, yep, it's now time to fight the boss. Alphard. She wanted to check in with Siam, but knew she shouldn't risk breaking radio silence without knowing the situation on his end.
まあ、シャムに救援はいらないだろうけど。
Oh, yes he does. He probably doesn't need me to bail him out anyway. She wanted to rush to him, but knew Siam would be disappointed in her if she did. Now that she'd made it forward of the secure freight compartment, doubling back to the rear of the train only to have to come forward again would be a waste of time.
機関室に行って列車を止めさせた方がいいのかな。
Maybe I should head for the engine and stop the train. With their cover blown, they certainly couldn't go to Amman. She and Siam would need to get off the train en route and conceal their whereabouts. Probably the sooner the better. Huh? The synths shifted. She heard sharp footsteps. She spun around, ready to fire. There was a rustling of clothes and a new sensation crashed against her skin. Here we go. Here we go. Sadaka's arrival had helped put an end to the gunfight in the rear troop compartment. She caught 2 of the guards in a pincer attack, and before the last enemy had a chance to regroup, Siam had managed to gun him down.
相変わらず手洗いなシャム。もういい年だろう。体を打たせるようなやり方はよせ。
Uh-oh, here we go. Reckless as ever, Siam. You know, at your age, you really need to stop letting yourself get shot. Sadaka strolled over to him. Uh-oh, she's gonna do an execution or something. Only after confirming that all the guards had been neutralized did Siam finally let his mindset shift from combat readiness to simple high alert.
今回限りだ。お前が来ることは分かっていたからな。
I only did as much as was necessary.
He said.
I knew you'd show up.
せいぜい目立つ的になって連中の背後を明かしたかった。
I wanted to give them an obvious target so they'd leave their rear exposed.
The tension between them eased. It had been years since they'd been alone in the same room together.
しかし、らしくない戦術だ。
Still, that strategy isn't like you, Sadaka said.
どうして後ろの車両に下がらなかった？
Why
有
didn't
利
you...
な地点を確保しながら徐々に後退すれば、敵の戦力分散も誘えたはずだ。
Why didn't you fall back to the next car? That's what you should have done. A tactical retreat. Keep them disrupted and on the move. Siam considered. Maybe it really hadn't been necessary to make the car into the battleground. If it accomplished one thing, it was allowing the fleeing passengers a chance to make it to safety.
まさかとは思うんだが、ちょっとした正義感かい？
Don't tell me. You've finally grown a conscience, Sadaka said, as if she'd read his mind.
雇い主への配慮だ。ことが発覚した以上、我々の素性は知られるだろう。解放戦線に雇われた側として、お前たちへの悪評を立てないよう努力したつもりだが。
I'm just thinking about our employer. With our cover blown, the enemy might have been able to ID us. I had to do what I could to make sure you guys wouldn't get a bad reputation with the Liberation Front.
今回の件はウイルス兵器なんてものを持ち出そうとしたイスラエル側に非があると。
If you say so, Sadaka said. So, this was all over the UA, which means this little spate of bloodshed is on the Israelis. of trying to get their hands on some weaponized virus.
あくまで我々が鉄槌を下すのは彼女の盗っ人どもだけだと。
And we're just meting out punishment to the thieves?
それは少し嬉しいんだが、同時に後味が悪いな。
I suppose that's a good thing, if you say so. But it leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
それはどういう
How so?
だってお前も私も
Uh-oh, here we
それ
go.
ほど嫌いなものはないだろう。
Here we go. I've been waiting for this. Neither of us like wasted effort.
せっかく守ったのに
Yep.
無駄な努力をさせてしまっ
Yep.
た。
And look at all the trouble I've put you through. Mm-hmm.
さて、二つ断っておくよ、シャム。
All right, Siam, I'm going to tell you two things.
一つはケースを譲ってもらうこと。
First, I'm going to be taking this case.
一つは一人残らず消えてもらうことだ。
Second, I'm not going to be leaving anyone alive to know about it.
目撃者も当事者もまとめて掃除させてもらう。
No witnesses, including you. No hard feelings. Just business. Gunfire and screams echoed from the back of the train. Someone who was mercilessly gunning down the passengers who fled there for safety. Holy fuck!
解
Jesus!
放戦線側のエージェントはお前たち二人だけだ。私も個人的な部下を何人か連れてきていてね。今後部車両で働いているのはそいつらだ。悪いな。お前がせっかく体を張って保護したというのに。
The Liberation Front only sent 2 covert operatives. I brought more. That's who you're hearing going to work back there. And after you risked yourself to protect those people, too. I knew this was gonna happen, Ji-chan. I knew it. That's why I was kind of groaning at all the flashbacks, because I knew it was gonna be completely pointless.
解放戦線を裏切ったのか
You're betraying the front!
Siam rasped.
裏切るも何もない。解放戦線において私はただのパトロンだ。それこそ定かを施したに過ぎんさ。
It's not betrayal. The Liberation Front was simply a patron to me. I was just doing Sadaka, really. Get it?
今じゃ原理主義者に武装闘争のお株も奪われている。いい加減、この辺りが縁切り時だ。
Well, now the fundamentalists have been beaten at their own armed conflict game. I'd say it's high time we cut ties. One who believes absolutely in a particular religious doctrine, used here to refer to Islamic fundamentalists. These include radical anti-American and anti-Israeli factions who had repeatedly come into armed conflict with the Israeli military. The slaughter continued. Several passengers who hadn't managed to flee to the rear of the train still cowered, trembling in the car where Siam had battled the soldiers. A survival that would take an ironic turn when the butchers doing their work farther down the train reached this car.
矛盾しているそのトランクがあれば解放戦線もお前の望み通り物騒になるはずだが
This doesn't make sense.
Siam said.
If the Liberation Front gets the bioweapon, they'll become the danger you've always wanted them to be.
その通り。これがパレスチナ側に渡れば、イスラエル側も黙ってはいまい。
Indeed. If I hand this over to the Palestinians, the Israelis won't be able to stand by quietly.
だが、戦力に劣るお前たちは、最終的にこいつの封を開けるだろう。
But your side is outgunned, outshipped and outmanned. And ultimately you'd be forced to break the seal on this thing to even up the odds.
そうなっては困る。何しろ、米軍にこいつを払い下げさせたのは私だからな。
And I can't have that. After all, I'm the one who prompted the US military to sell it off in the first place. Siam let out a hoarse gasp.
欲しいのは医者。それもとびきり物騒なね。しばらくするとこんな噂が流れる。米軍流出の生物兵器が輸送途中にヨルダン国内で襲撃され、奪われた。
What I want is rumors, Sadaka continued. Dangerous rumors. A biological weapon the US military was getting rid of, stolen mid-transport in a raid in Jordanian territory.
輸送計画はイスラエル強硬派。襲ったのは解放戦線。ウイルスは誰の手に渡った？
Was the transport arranged by Israeli hardliners? Was the raid carried out by the PLO? Who got their hands on the virus?
どれも真実はわからない。だが、緊張だけは高まる。
No one will be sure of the truth. Tensions will rise.
欲しいのはそれだけだ。ハルブはよろしくない。こういうおもちゃはきちんと使い方が分かっている人間が管理するものだ。
That's all I'm after. War is never good. A toy like this needs to be reserved for those who know to use it properly. This was all a political farce, an especially poor one at that. Neither the side transporting the weapon nor the side attempting to steal it would know where it had gone. Suspicion would beget suspicion, plunging the Middle East further into chaos.
イスラエル側はこの件を知らないのか。
Do the Israelis not know about this?
Siam asked.
上の試作品の取引は強硬派の独断か。
Was the UA prototype deal some hardliners working independently?
ああ、イスラエル側の総意じゃない。隅に追いやられつつある老人の悪あがきだ。今
That's
頃は連中も大慌てだろう。身内が何の相談もせず、自分たちの家に致命的な毒を運び込もうとしているんだ。
That's right. The desperate flailing of some old fools who were backed into a corner. Their leaders must be in a mad rush right now, knowing that their own people have been trying to bring some lethal poison into their house without consulting them.
まあ、その老人にとってはこれもイスラエルのための善意なんだろうがな。
Of
お前
course.
の口癖通り、信念というのは実に迷惑だよ。
Of course, for them, all of this was for the good of Israel. What was that you always said? Faith can be a real nuisance. Siam felt a dark cloud pass behind his eyes. This operation had been doomed to failure from the start. The Liberation Front had been played like an ode. I don't know what an ode is. Is it like a Middle Eastern instrument? I'm not sure. Key people had been handed the information they wanted, like they wanted it. After that greed and anticipation had ensured that they'd acted predictably. Seeking only chaos and confusion, the instigator had used one of the oldest tricks in the book. Oh, come on, do they really have to define what an instigator is? One who controls and dispenses information in order to achieve political or military goals. A skillfully executed agitation can sometimes be more effective than deploying a major force. Both military and political organizations around the world regularly employ such methods.
そして俺たちが死ねば解放戦線も奪還に失敗したと判断するか。
And so we die, and the Liberation Front fails to acquire the weapon. Is that the idea?
Siam said.
お前こそらしくない。そんな必要はないだろう。対立を煽るバカな。今さら第三者が油を注がずともこの地の火は消えん。
There's no need for this. You want to fan the flames of confrontation? Even without a third party pouring on more gas, the fires here aren't going to go out.
そうだな。この程度のコントロールは私が手を下すまでもないんだが、今回は他にも理由があった。
You're right. Accomplishing that much wouldn't require my direct intervention. But I have other reasons for getting personally involved in this case.
ウーアの管理とお前の始末だ。
getting control of UA and getting rid of you.
お互い因縁だな、シャム。
Our fates are connected, Siam.
お前には2年前、ウーアの実験を阻止できなかった負い目がある。ウーアの輸送が行われるとすれば、必ず食いついてくると分かっていた。
And that's why he took her in. So is Caanan immune to UA? I wonder. You blame yourself for not stopping the UA experiment 2 years ago. I knew you'd take the bait this time if you knew the virus was involved. I think E3 is starting in an hour, Void Dweller. I'm pretty sure.
となれば、お前を始末できるとしたら、それはもう私ぐらいしかいないだろう。
And if anyone was going to be able to get rid of you, it was going to be me, right?
もっとも、お前がここまでふぬけていたとは思わなかったが。
Though I must admit, you're stupider than I gave you credit for.
当事者の口封じか。ウーアの存在を隠すのに俺が邪魔になったのか。
Can someone check that just to make sure is E3 starting in an hour? Because Nintendo E3, I mean. Because I don't want to block anyone from viewing E3 with this stream.
So this is all just a scheme to protect your secrets.
Siam said.
And I'm an obstacle to concealing the existence of the weaponized UA?
ああ、だが決めたのは今じゃない。私は初めからお前を始末しようと思っていた。
Yes. Though I didn't decide that just now. I'd been thinking about getting rid of you since the very beginning.
初めから俺がウーアを知ったのは2年前。お前とは4年前からの付き合いだが。
The very beginning. I only learned about UA 2 years ago. We've known each other for 4.
だからさ、お前は私の素性を知っている。生まれとか、そんなどうでもいいことじゃない。兵士としての私の癖を知りすぎている。
True, but you knew too much about me. Not my birthplace, I don't care about that. You know what kind of soldier I am. Siam stared at Sadaka through a haze of pain. Any secret bioweapon becomes less effective once its true capabilities are known. And she sees herself as a weapon. She'll kill me to maintain her effectiveness.
まさかな。極めて個人的な機密保持とは、俺も買いかぶられたものだ。
Sounds like I underestimated your need for privacy.
He said.
それで、カナンは俺のついでか。
So once you're done with me, Kanan's next.
ああ、あれがウーアの生き残りであることも知っている。お前と同じ問題だよ。
She is. I know that she's a UA survivor. She poses the same problem you do.
致死率 100% だったウイルス兵器の生存者だ。なぜ、どうして生き残ったのか。生存者分析は貴重なデータになる。
She survived a viral weapon with a 100% lethality rate. Why and how is she still alive? She'll be able to provide some valuable data. She is some kind of superpowered bullshit for sure. When she'd first arrived on the train, Sadaka had said something cryptic about looking into personnel and looking into a flaw with the weapon. Now it was clear what she'd meant was that she wanted to gather information about a UA survivor and how the weapon had affected her. From the start, this job had been about nothing more than getting the most she could out of UA.
ウーアを利用する者として唯一の生存者を直接確認したかったと。本当にそれだけか。
All this time, they still hadn't said what UA stands for.
So, You want to use the virus, and you wanted to personally examine the one person who'd survived it.
Siam asked.
Is there really all there is to this?
それ以外に理由はない。
That's it. Sorry to disappoint you. Sadaka said.
サンプルとして生きたまま捉えたかったが、あれはもういい。少しばかり特殊すぎる。
I'd hope to be able to bring her back as a live specimen, but, well, she's a little too exceptional, a little too protagonisty.
扱いやすいサンプルとは言えないし。
She wouldn't make for a very convenient sample.
憎しみに駆られて、今頃は無駄死にだ。
She's too caught up in hatred, and now she's going to die in vain.
後部車両の処理完了しました。こちらの処理が済み次第撤退の準備を。
Sadaka's radio crackled to life. Hello, oh wait, welcome to the stream.
The rear section is now secured.
A masculine voice declared.
Should prepare to withdraw once we're done with the cleanup.
少し待て。機関部の同志との合流が遅れている。ヘリに連絡は入れておけ。
Negative. Hold off on that for now. Our people in the forward section are late for the rendezvous. Contact the helicopter and let them know. The sound of gunfire told of more passengers being cut down.
ヘリだと。
Helicopter.
Siam croaked.
ああ、何しろ、この列車は時期脱線するからな。その後歩いて帰るわけにもいかんだろう。イスラエル側も無能じゃない。撤収は早いだけいい。
Oh, wait, I thought you had to sleep. Oh god, please get some rest. If you're tired. That's right. This train's gonna be derailed. And I sure don't plan on walking home. The Israelis aren't incompetent. I plan on getting out of here as fast as I can. Enjoy being part of a smoldering pile of steel and wreckage. She'd been very thorough. In all likelihood, she planted explosive further along the track. That would have been much simpler than tampering with the train directly. A crash might not completely destroy the train, but it would be enough to eliminate any remaining passengers. If the engine wasn't stopped before it was derailed, there would be no hope of saving anyone who remained alive on board.
ウーアに手を出した者と、それを奪った俺たちと、列車に居合わせた人間は一人残らず死亡する。
So anyone at all,
嫌いはあるが、筋書きとしては合格点だ。
so anyone at all involved with UA, the people who helped you steal it, even anyone who happened to be on board this train, they're all gonna die. Thorough, if a bit excessive.
Siam said.
だが、やり通せるか。
But can you actually pull it off?
まさか、あの小娘に期待しているのか？
Oh, don't tell me you're still counting on your little girl. Sadaka sneered. It was a crueler, colder expression than any Siam had ever seen before.
まるで使えない。少しは見込みがあると思ったが、あんなのは論外だ。ウーアへの憎しみで我をなくし、自らの性能を誤った。
She's of no use to me. I thought she might have some promise at first, but her hatred of the virus has made her lose control of herself. It's compromised her abilities.
がっかりだ。お前の手腕も地に落ちたな。
It's disappointing, really. All of your efforts wasted.
それは違う。
That's where you're wrong.
Siam said. He was dying, but his voice was firm. Yeah, he's been dying for a while. They've had this long conversation. In the back of his mind, there was a whisper. Sadaka had sent me some of her men to the engine compartment. Why hadn't they returned?
何が言いたい、シャム。
Just what are you trying to say, Siam?
どうということのない自明の話だ。恐怖を知っている者は二 憎しみでは動かない。
Nothing special, just the obvious. People who know fear don't act out of hatred.
カナンはお前や俺とは違う。
Caanan, she's not like you or me.
The chill between them became acute. She lifted up her gun, taking aim at Siam's forehead. Her expression said it all. This man before her had fallen from grace, and her disappointment had turned deadly.
断っておくが、私はお前を同胞とは思っていない。
Let me just make one thing clear. I'm not like you, she said.
それが正しい。なぜならお前は
You're right. Because you know what you are.
For one fleeting moment, their old connection was renewed. He spoke. She listened, saying nothing, as she often had done so long ago.
気が変わった。
Oh, they're not going to say what he said. Interesting. I've changed my mind, Sadaka
や
said.
はり、とどめを刺しておこう。
Yep, and Kanan's probably going to jump in to see it. I think I am going to finish you off.
なぜ初めから頭を打たなかった。
Why didn't you just shoot me in the head to begin with?
ジンクスだよ。
Because of the jinx.
今までお前は何度も被弾したが、
You've been shot so many times.
不思議とただの一度も頭に当たったことはなかっただろう。
Yet by some miracle, you've never taken a bullet to the head. Her voice was hollow, as if she'd already put this to an end. She raised her gun.
不思議でもなんでもない。頭を打たれなかったからこうして生きている。俺もお前もただの兵士だからな。
It's not a miracle.
He said.
Not getting shot in the head is just why I'm still alive. You and I, we're both just ordinary soldiers.
知ってる。
I know that, Sadaka
け
replied.
どまあ、私にとってそういうイメージだったんだ。お前は。
It's just this image I have of you. That's all. Ta-ta. Oh! Oh! Sam! Ugh. I knew it. Oh, wow. She managed to stop her. He's probably going to die from his wounds, though. Caanan came charging from the adjacent car. In the heat of her fury, she fired wildly, but still managed to knock the gun from Sadaka's hand. Ugh. Sadaka instantly retreated. She sensed instinctively to her chagrin that she couldn't defeat her young rival now. Under the circumstances, this was prey she wasn't ready to hunt. Sadaka clicked her tongue, dismayed at her being outfaced by such an impulsive attack. The girl had been so calm and collected before. Somehow she'd been transformed into a creature of pure emotion, a warrior undefeated and clearly beyond Sadaka's capabilities. Oh, no sound. The scent shifted. She heard sharp footsteps. She spun around, ready to fire her gun. There was a rustling of clothes, and a new sensation crashed against her skin. A volley of bullets whizzed right past her face. But how? A chill ran down her spine. There were enemies other than the soldiers on board the train. Oh, now we're seeing it from her perspective. This one was dressed as a train engineer. Shaking off a premonition of disaster, she pursued this new foe as he retreated toward the front of the train. Right now, she needed to stop the engine. She followed the enemy who'd shot at her all the way into the driver's cab. Whoever the fake engineer was, he was defiant to the last, finally collapsing without a word. Looking around the cab, Caanan saw the murdered bodies of the real engineers, as well as a smashed control panel, which was now clearly useless. If this guy was wrecking the train, Caanan thought, he must not have been in league with the soldiers protecting it. And if there was some third party that they hadn't been aware of, Caanan broke into a sprint. If she had a better understanding of how the train functioned, she might have found some way to stop it by force by destroying something in the engine room. But she had no time to ponder such things now. Her instinct spurred her into motion. Priorities of the situation had changed. She raced back toward where she left Siam and Sadaka. She reflected that she hadn't liked this job from the start. Something about the train just felt wrong, and its mottled colors had boded ill from the beginning. Siam. She ran as fast as she could. The sight of her previous battle and everything beyond reeked of the thick stench of death. Her dread of what she would find almost overwhelming as she headed into the compartment that had held the second group of soldiers. Here we go. All at once, she saw pure, excruciating red. Ooh. All this, yep, when they play classical music during a shootout. A very memorable trope. Violent emotions surged through her as she cut loose with a wild barrage. It was the first time since she'd picked up a gun that she'd fire without certainty that she hit her mark. The bullets found their marks and several of Sadaka's men fell dead. But how many moments had this bought Siam? Sadaka had vanished toward the rear of the train, carrying the case with her. Caanan didn't even consider following her. Instead, dumbstruck, she dropped to her knees beside her mentor. Her mind couldn't process the situation. Just like a newly hatched chick, Siam told her with the faintest of smiles.
Kanan.
Caanan.
No. She shook her head, not wanting to hear what he would say.
見ての通り、致命傷だ。
I've taken my death wound. You can see that.
His voice was calm. She stared at him, silently pleading. No. She kept shaking her head slowly, inwardly imploring him not to die, but unable to put her plea into words. Siam stirred. His consciousness was fading from blood loss, but the face before him was one he recognized. He shook himself backward to awareness, recalling the young girl he'd found 2 years before. The memory hardly seemed real. Those days of mundane everyday life hadn't really been his to live.
カナン、現状を確認する。
Caanan, you need to accept this.
やだ。そんなのできない。
No, I can't.
早くなんてできない。
I won't! She knelt, still shaking her head as Siam calmly told her what had happened. Sadaka had betrayed them. She had stabbed him and stolen the case with the bioweapon. The train would soon be derailed and destroyed. The train crew and passengers had been murdered, though there might still be a few alive. They failed miserably, and the situation was only getting worse. Sadaka was getting away.
あんな女どうでもいい。それより早く手当てを。さえ止めれば。まだ。
I don't care about Sadaka! Caanan wailed. We need to get you medical attention! If we can just stop the bleeding, we can still...
時間の無駄だ。お前には他にやることがある。
That'd be a waste of time. There are other things you need to do.
目を覚ませかな。これは特別なことか。俺とあの女は同じ兵士に過ぎない。人間性を捨て去った兵士が同じ兵士に撃たれただけだ。そこに特別な意味を見出せと教えたか。
Open your eyes, Caanan. There is nothing special about this. Me and her were soldiers, nothing more. Soldiers toss away their humanity. Soldiers get shot. Did I ever teach you to seek some meaning in that?
違う。シャムとあいつは違う。
No, you're wrong! You're not like her, Siam!
あの女のことは知らない。知りたくもない。けどシャムは違う。シャムは優しい。冷たいけど、あんな人でなしじゃない。
I don't know what she's like and I don't want to know, but you're different. You're a good person. Maybe you can be cold, but you're not a monster like her. He had no response to that. Wasn't he a monster? Well, perhaps not. He had recovered enough emotion to feel guilt at what she said, at least. Though that hardly made him human.
何をするべきかを測り、何ができるかを考えろと言っただろう。
You need to focus, Caanan. Assess the situation and form a plan of action.
分かっているはずだ。俺たちの仕事はケースを取り返し、列車を止め、ウーアを根絶する。
Remember, our job is to get that case back, stop the train, and eradicate the UA virus.
It wasn't fair. He knew how to press her buttons. Eradicate the UA virus. The very words that would transform Caanan from girl to soldier.
カナン、そちらの状況を。戦闘車両で何があった？
Caanan, tell me what happened at the head of the train.
護衛はみんな倒した。機関士はあの女の仲間で、操作盤じゃ列車は止められない。機関室を壊すか、車両ごとにあるブレーキを使わないと。
I took down all the guards. The engineer was one of that woman's companions, and he wrecked the control panel. So now we can't use it to stop the train. We'll have to destroy the engine room itself, or maybe use the brakes on each of the individual cars.
他に生存者は？
Were there any other survivors?
貨物列車から先には誰もいない。生きてるのは私たちだけ。
Nobody ahead of the secure freight car. The only ones alive are you and me.
了解した。俺は列車を止める。お前は奴を追え。俺からの言葉はこれが最後だ。
Yeah, because if the train's gonna keep going, it's gonna crash into the station at the end, and that would be bad.
Good. I'll stop the train. You go after her. No discussion.
Caanan held her breath. Leaving Siam here, wounded as he was tantamount to letting him die. And why should he worry about stopping the train when they were the only passengers still alive? Caanan couldn't imagine leaving him to spend his final moments alone.
カナン、周りを見ろ。
Caanan,
生存者は何人いる？
look around. How many survivors?
His soldier's edge wiped away for her sentimentality.
教えてくれカナン。何人いるんだ？
Tell me, Caanan. How many are there?
She lifted her downcast eyes. In all their time together, he had never once relied on her exceptional nature. He had never shunned her for being different, always accepted her together with her curse, her gift. Now he needed her help.
3人いる。たった3人しかいない。
Ooh, I'm guessing it's just those two and Caanan. So, and not Caanan, Alphard. So, yep, no civilians to worry about at least. There are 3, she said, gazing around, reading the color of the fallen. Only 3 people alive.
3人しか。
Only 3.
Yes, only 3. Amidst the sea of 3 of the passengers still alive. Okay, I thought she was including all of them. Wow, 3 passengers managed to survive. Amidst the sea of blood that surrounded them, 3 of the passengers still clung to life.
そうだ。
Yes, that's right, she said. She doubted they had any chance of survival. Yeah, seriously. In the middle of the desert? Like, even with medical care, probably none of them would make it. But that wasn't how Siam saw things, or how he wanted her to see it.
違う。3人も助けられる。
No, she corrected herself. There are 3 whole people we can save. At that, he nodded. Maybe just a little he smiled.
列車は俺が受け持つ。
I'll handle the train.
連結を外しブレーキをかける程度だ。この体でも十分に現実的な役割だろう。
I'll undo the coupling so that we're able to apply the brakes. Pretty sure that I've got still enough strength to pull that off.
I'm pretty sure he does, given that he's been talking so long.
だがお前の方は少し骨だぞ。
You sure you're gonna die, buddy? You don't seem that broken here if you can do all this.
Your job is going to be a bit more difficult.
でもすぐに戻る。
I know, but I'll be right back. Her voice, her emotions, under control at last. She was the consummate warrior now, just like he'd trained her to be.
カナン、
Caanan,
お前は戦争によって過去を奪われた犠牲者であり、奴は権力闘争によって過去を失った敗北者だ。
you were victimized, your past stolen from you by war. She was defeated, her past swallowed up by power struggles beyond her control.
兵士としての起点は同じだが、あり方は異なっている。
Your past as warriors began in similar places, but you have walked them in different ways.
Siam's gun slid from his hand. It seemed in that moment like a symbol of his life. A hard and deadly weapon, a killer of many, now abandoned.
破壊によって生まれた兵士は憎しみを武器とする。
Soldiers born of destruction make hatred into a weapon.
Siam said.
俺と奴のうつろさは単にそれに焼き尽くされただけの話だ。
That's what made her and me so empty inside. Hatred just burns inside until all else is burned out.
その話を覚えているか？
Do you remember what I told you?
覚えてる。憎しみには。
I do. You said that hatred must never be used as a means of fighting back. Even if the power it gave you let you destroy your opponent, if you cultivated such power, it would destroy you too in the end.
Well done.
He thought. Perhaps he really had managed to pass on all that he could. His lips curled into the ghost of a smile. He once said that death was the great equalizer, that it came the same for everyone, no matter who they were. Now, Siam's time had come, and Kanan realized with sudden and surprising calm that she'd accepted it.
最後のタリウムだ。
My last request.
He said.
奴を逃がすな。より多くの命を救え。
Don't let Sadaka get away. And save whatever lives you can.
シャムも元気で。
Yes. Good fortune to you, Siam. There was no grieving. They simply parted ways, each reflecting on the past 2 years and needing nothing more than that. Sadaka stood atop the train. Oh, are we gonna get like a confrontation as she like grabs onto the helicopter's like landing strut and she flies off or something? The scenery, a uniform brown for much of the journey, but now dotted with green in places. They were drawn close to their destination, the destination she had chosen. Very shortly, the train's usefulness would come to an end. There were less than 2 minutes to go before the rendezvous with the Black Hawk, an assault helicopter manufactured by Sikorsky Aircraft. First saw combat with the U.S. Army during the invasion of Grenada in 1983, and in more recent years has seen service in the Iraq War. It is used by over 20 nation states, including Japan, Australia, Egypt, and Israel. Sorry. Sadaka carried the case in her left hand, handcuffed to her wrist, and gripped her gun in her right. The FN-57, a semi-automatic pistol produced by a Belgian manufacturer, FN Herstal, uses 5.7 times 28mm cartridges with high penetration power, typically sold only to law enforcement and military agencies. However, there are less powerful versions that have been made available to the civilian market. The preparations had been flawless. The helicopter pilot was highly skilled. He would lower a ladder to her at her position, and she would simply ride it right on up. Yep. She'd accomplished most of what she wanted, and now her retreat would be swift. She should have been wholly pleased with the situation, and yet she was wholly dissatisfied. Of course, that would have been the case regardless of the results she'd obtained. It was not in her nature to ever be content. Only by striking out at the world around her could she ever even keep herself sane. And now her thirst for vengeance was worse than ever. And here she comes. A girlish silhouette appeared on the roof of the train not far away, and Sadaka felt her thirst change to a hunger. Time to go a-hunting. She more than had the upper hand here. If she were to go down, the case would fall down with her. And if the case were damaged, the UA virus would likely be released. Which meant that the little lady couldn't shoot at her until she got the case away, whereas Sadaka was free to unload on her as much as she wanted. The kill was certain to be hers. How could she help but smile? She'd stolen the UA, stirred up both sides of an international conflict, and would soon eliminate the last witness to her scheme. Why am I slurring my words here, jeez? It had been quite some time since she'd last scored such a coup. I suppose I owe the little lady a little thanks for contributing to my success. Her target was 3 cars away. Knowing her pistol's effective range, Sadaka gave herself an 80% chance of hitting. If Caanan had been 1 car closer, it would have been 100%. And since it wasn't like the girl could fly, she had no hope of escaping certain death. Sadaka aimed at the train car's roof just in front of Caanan's feet. Time for a little intimidation. Let's show this upstart what real skill looks like. She needs to understand that a step closer to me is a step closer into certain death. All right, little lady. Let's see how well you dance. Siam struggled to his feet. He had a final job to do. There were 6 meters and a door between him and the coupling that linked this car to the next. Easy enough under ordinary circumstances. Once he undid the coupling, the automatic air brake would kick in and stop the rear section of the train. A style of brake used by railway cars that utilizes air pressure. All of the train cars include sections of a brake pipe linked to each other down to the center of the train's undercarriage. The brakes on the cars are structured so that they activate when air is removed from the pipe. If 2 cars become separated, this releases the air, causing the brakes to kick in automatically. And Caanan knows about this, so she'll know to be ready to brace for impact, whereas Alphard wouldn't. The distance seemed vast. How much time was it going to take him to do something as simple as waking up in the morning and washing his face? It was altogether too long and treacherous a journey. A journey that would use up all that remained of his life.
まだ消えていなかったのか。
See you, Void. Thanks for coming.
So they still haven't disappeared on me.
Muddied memories played in his mind like scenes from an old movie.
There was a time when I saw hope in a girl who made nihilism her resolve to live, reason to live. After that, I found hope in another girl's weakness as she clung to her desire to live.
Oh wow, he trained Sadaka too. Oh my god. Wow. Huh! I knew they worked together, but wow. That's insanitary. The hope Sadaka brought had been like opium. A drug he took to coax himself into thinking his actions were for the best. Somehow at the time he'd never realized his mistake. And then there was Caanan, a victim of war. She gave him a kind of hope that brought all his own pain sharply into focus. Even at death's door, she thought nothing of dying, only wanting to live a life of meaning. He had no doubt now which kind of hope was the better one, but he still remembered both, just as he remembered the fate that had driven him long before he met either girl. That was decades ago now. How naive he had been, an unsophisticated firebrand clinging to blind belief.
Three wounded passengers. 3 people to save.
The thought drove him on. 2 years earlier, he'd been unable to save anyone. He'd been nothing but a killer. Did that make him a hypocrite now? Perhaps. But if so, for once he could accept his own hypocrisy. Siam blinked. His eyesight was failing. Maybe it was the light of truth that had blinded him. He was paying at last for the sin of casting aside his beliefs so long ago. Did he have the stamina to keep going? Of course he did. He trained himself to find new reserves of strength when it mattered most. War was always like this. After the mind and body had given out, a true soldier could forge onward on spirit alone, like a servant of the dead. It had been a long time since he'd taken a job that tipped the scales back toward the living. Of course, he'd always told himself that he killed so he and others might live. Mercy and slaughter stem from the same behavioral principle, the struggle for self-preservation. Still, a soldier's deeds seemed to slip inevitably towards the negative end of the spectrum. He remembered how the long slide had started, the motives that had driven him to take up arms and pushed him further and further into the void.
I'll lose my life now. I will lose this emptiness. At long last, my balance will return to 0.
Another memory. Before they'd boarded the train, the girl had begged him for a special boon. Just when had that happened exactly?
シャムの嘘つき、全然痛くないって言ったのに、こんなに痛むなんて聞いてなかった。
You're such a liar, Siam. You said it wasn't gonna hurt at all. I had no idea it was gonna be this painful. Perhaps at the time, Siam had simply forgotten how painful it was. He'd been good at that after all. He asked her if the pain from her new tattoo would impair her from the upcoming job, and she shook her head.
痛いのは本当だけど、
I mean, yeah, it does hurt, Caanan said.
嬉しいから性能は上がってるよ。
But it makes me happy, and that makes me better at what I do. The girl's skills really did change based on her emotions. Her good moods were rare, but when she was happy, her abilities were remarkable indeed. Damn, Maria is gonna give her like a super power boost. A tattoo was a small price to pay for that. This girl was quite probably the strangest person he'd ever known. Meeting her was an honor for him, in a way. Even while her training made her into a soldier, she never truly let go of her feelings. Maybe she'd been a free spirit the whole time, or maybe her feelings are what helped her through in part. Didn't matter which it was.
家族の証だ。これがある限り、私はシャムの教えを忘れない。
This shows we're family, Siam. For as long as I have it, I'll never forget what you've taught me. Remembering it now, we felt a vague sense of fulfillment. For a monster, he'd done a pretty good job. Here we go, final showdown. Or rather, first showdown, I guess. The two girls stood 30 meters apart. Kanan had stopped her advance just at the edge of the third car. Sadako waited, silent. Her rival could never hit her from there. Kanan took one more step. One more and the real fun would start. Okay. Good night, Ji-chan. The curtain had risen on the final act of the drama. The violent drone of a helicopter sounded in the distance. In a matter of moments, the chopper would arrive. Lowering the ladder, Sadako would then ascend in triumph.
どうした?
What are you waiting for? She called out.
まさか見送りで済ますわけか? このケースの中身はお前の恩敵だと思ったの。
Don't tell me you came up here just to watch me go. I thought you were sworn to destroy the virus. Her challenge was a hiss upon the wind. Kanan glared. She knew she could reach her enemy in 5 seconds or less, but Sadako would only need one of those seconds to aim and fire. Kanan would be killed 5 times over if she charged. It was a risk she couldn't afford to take. She couldn't hope to win, not under these conditions.
見逃すか。
You really think I'd just let you go? Kanan called back. Don't be a fool. Oh, don't be a fool. Sadako's taunt had stung her nerves. Her rival's voice was like a jagged claw. A filthy talon scratching at her temples. Kanan ground her teeth in frustration. She had no fear of charging in without a plan. But that wasn't going to work on it this time. That would give too much of an edge to her opponent.
拍子抜けだな。まあいい。それならそれで有効に使わせてもらうさ。
This is such a letdown, Sadako said. But no matter. Whatever you do, I'll be able to put the contents of this case to good use.
なお嬢さん、このウーアは欠陥品だ。交渉にしか使えない。なぜ？簡単だ。兵器としては強すぎるからさ。
Did you know, young lady, that this UA is a flawed weapon? More a negotiation tool than anything I'd actually use. And why's that, you ask? Because it's too powerful. The ladder swayed down from the helicopter above. Sadako could make her escape in a moment if she chose. And yet she hesitated, savoring Kanan's defeat.
残念ながら兵器として使うにはまだ早い。
The fact is, it's too early to use the virus as a weapon, she said.
優れた研究者に当てがわせて最短で2年というところ。それだけやってようやく価値が生まれる。ようやくカタログに載せられる。
It'll take the world's top researchers 2 years to at least fully understand what they're up against. Then the UA will have some real value in my catalog.
わかるか？ してきた人数なんてものは成果にも入らない。ただの失敗だ。
A
お
pity
前
you.
たちの死には一銭の価値もついていない。
God damn it. There are such long pauses between the sentences.
A pity you won't be there to see that. Your deaths here are really going to accomplish nothing.
Hello, Mystery Theater. Thanks for joining us for the end.
だが安心しろ。私がこいつを一人前に育ててやる。お前の両親を奪った兵器に立派な名前をつけてやる。
But don't worry. I'll make sure the UA reaches its full potential. No one may care that it took your parents from you, but one day this weapon will make a grand name for itself.
そうだ。奴らが望む通り、せいぜい高値をつけて振りまいてやろうじゃないか。
And then I'm going to make a killing.
Kanan fought back a wave of nausea. Ferocious colors danced before her eyes.
吠えて
Bark all you want, she said.
ろ。そんなの私の知ったことじゃない。
It's not gonna happen. She heard a dull clang from somewhere ahead and felt a faint shudder through her feet. The train began to slow. Strength filled her limbs. She shifted her posture, ready to spring into action.
いいぞ。挑発の必要はなかったか。
I guess I didn't need to provoke you.
Sadaka sneered. She could see it in Kanan's eyes. The girl was ready to run right to her death. Everything was falling into place. The bleak scenery was opening out into a fertile landscape. Kanan was about to die. One step forward and there would be a resounding gunshot. But instead of moving, Kanan
名
spoke.
前。お前本当はなんて言うの？
Your name. What is it really? Sadaka smiled inwardly.
So that's what's been gnawing at her.
アルファルド。
Alphard,
She said.
お前にならなかった。どこにでもいるテロリストだよ。
Siam wanted his promised land, but all he was able to make me into was just another terrorist.
And at her words, the race began. Damn!
What?
Sadaka Alphard stared in surprise. The instant that she realized her first shot had missed, she pulled the trigger again. This time her eyes went wide with shock. She can dodge bullets. Oh my god!
How could I miss at this range?
The red-clad figure sped along the train car roof. Zigzagging as she moved like a bolt of lightning, she's superhuman. On she came, heedless of the death in the air around her. There was no doubt about it. The girl was dodging bullets. For a master marksman like Alphard, it was a nightmare come to life.
ふざけるな。そんな話が。
No, this is ridiculous! It can't be!
What Kanan was doing simply shouldn't be possible. Just before each shot, she would change her trajectory unpredictably, shifting out of the bullet's path. Evasive movement was a standard tactic, but knowing precisely when and where to dodge, that required an inhuman ability to predict the future. She's got ultra instinct. Oh my god.
銃弾が見えているとでも。
It's like she can practically see the bullets!
That simply wasn't possible. Was it? Alphard's mind raced. She fought a rising wave of panic. The girl had almost reached her now. Alphard still had one advantage, the case in her left hand. The girl would have to go for the case before attacking her directly. Alphard would just have to kill her before that. It was simple, just pull the trigger, and yet she began to doubt that she could hit Kanan. She failed to comprehend what she was up against, her mind recoiling as she began to understand the full extent of this demon's powers.
What the hell are you?
I am Kanan.
私が見ているのか、集団なんかじゃない。
You don't really think I can see the bullets, do you? Her voice was like the whispers of the devil himself, speaking what was in Alphard's mind. She fixed her opponent with a victorious stare.
言っただろう。私が見たのはお前の感情だ。
I see your hatred. She can see my emotions. Of course. This girl could discern emotions like they were colors. She wasn't looking at the bullets or even at my movements. She was reading my expectations. She could tell exactly when I believed that I would hit at my mark, exactly when I would fire. That was precisely when she dodged aside. So long as the foe had human emotions, this girl could predict what that foe would do an instant before it happened. This was it. Kanan was all confidence. She was closing in for the kill.
私も
Of
今
course!
気づいた。
Alphard laughed. The only way to ruin her enemy's predictions was to do something wholly unpredictable. Yep. As Alphard hurled the case from the train, Caanan instinctively launched after it. Realizing she'd been baited even as she was tumbling through the air, Caanan clutched the case to her chest and rolled to face her foe, reflexively bringing her gun to bear. Damn! Bullets whizzed in both directions. For an instant, the two combatants seemed suspended in kind of distorted balance. Two natural opposites in opposition. One who could sense emotions and one who could eliminate them. By all rights, they should have been evenly matched. But Kanan's own emotions tipped the scale in her favor. Alphard had let herself get too drawn in. She had forced herself to swallow her hatred for a moment and fired at the girl as if a simple obstacle. She would find a color of determination that Caanan could not see. And yet even those shots failed to strike home. Even with her hatred suppressed, her intentions could be read. She would need to discard her hate, to divorce even her will, to win from her actions. Only then would she be able to slay this super person. But the girl's bullets also failed to hit. Twisting through the air, fighting to keep hold of the case, she couldn't aim with perfect accuracy. Throwing away the bioweapon had been a split-second decision on Alphard's part. She hadn't spared an iota of consideration for the thousands who might die if the case broke open. Caanan trembled as an evil chill ran down her spine at the sight of Alphard standing on the train. There she saw not another woman, but an angel of death, inorganic destruction made flesh. Ouch! She rolled as she struck the ground, safeguarding the case with her body. The impact scattered her senses. She struggled to remain conscious as she bounced along, focusing on protecting her precious burden. If it broke open now, everything she and Siam had done would be for nothing. At last, she slid to a stop and lay there, panting with exertion. She checked the case before she checked herself for injuries. I did it. The case was intact. Next, following standard protocol, she began assessing her own scrapes and bruises. The train. Oh my god. Damn. Yep, it stopped. The grating screech of brakes filled the air. The wheel threw up a shower of sparks along the rails as the train receded. Already the last battlefield they had shared was withdrawing into the unreachable. Siam. There was was no sadness. They already made their farewells. Instead, she felt a grim contentment and a steely pride. Anyone with her abilities could have handled the challenges she'd faced. But Siam had been on the brink of death, and yet he had succeeded at a task that would have been difficult for anyone. He'd finished things as he had lived, a trustworthy soldier to the very end. She had failed to retrieve the UA virus. The train had been stopped and her test subject had gotten away. Never had she been so defeated. She had killed Siam and stoked the flames of conflict between two opposing camps, but those achievements didn't change the fact that the operation had been a failure. To be denied a single objective was to her a crushing loss. Failing on 3 counts was intolerable.
Alphard, it's too dangerous to stay here. You need to give the order to withdraw.
One of her subordinates was calling out from behind her, but her attentions remained focused on a point on the ground far behind and below. It was over. The UA in that case was, after all, only an old prototype. She had other options. It was a pharmaceutical firm already performing research on a superior form of the virus. There was no need to stay and risk capture for the sake of the virus. Take us down, she said. I want to make sure he's dead. But it was hard to take her eyes off the girl. The girl was crawling along the bare earth beside the track, a bitter reminder of failure. Her thoughts shifted back to Siam. The man had fallen from grace. In the 11th hour, he seemed to have embraced those saying from the Quran that for whosoever killeth a human being, shall be as if he killed all mankind. Everybody knows what the Quran is. It is a central religious text of Islam consisting of 114 chapters, also known as the Quran in English. It's the most important source for Islamic law, taken through revelations of Allah to the Prophet Muhammad, compiled by his companions after his death. He has refused to continue being a tool to the very end. Destroying him was no betrayal. She never regarded him as kin. Her decision to eliminate him had been motivated by the simple fact that he'd been in her way. After all, as he said himself,
You're right, because you know what you are?
She smiled darkly as she recalled his words. Here we go, we're going to hear what he said. Damn, he's complimenting her.
You're strong. You've attained a kind of perfection. You don't know failure. You can accomplish incredible things all on your own. But that magnificence is like a sterile room with nothing remaining within.
He was right. And he failed to understand that there'd never been anything there to begin with. She was an empty shell with no false dignity to protect. She'd never had anything to lose but flesh and blood. Siam should have recognized this. The man was himself a broken being. Alphard had never really been alive.
Alphard, you're unstoppable. But if instead of striving for some empty goal, you could find something that truly matters to you, then you could be so much more.
It was laughable, really. Conflict was what mattered to her. That was her driving force. She had lost her family and discarded her past, retaining only what enabled her to survive. The ashes of her former self were scattered across the world. Every weakness burned away in the crucible of conflict. She couldn't imagine anything but hatred for the rest of humankind. Now her eyes were like fire as she stared down at the girl below. Caanan might still be in range of the right kind of weapon. I know, Oe. I have like, what, little less than 10 minutes left, right? Hey, do we have any automatic rifles on board?
Negative. There was no mention of rifles on their orders.
そうか。ならいい。
I see.
運がいいと言うべきだな、お嬢さん。
Never mind. Looks like this is your lucky day, little lady.
アルファルド、地上支援班がアンマン航空管制無線を傍受。アルバディアの偵察ヘリ出動を確認しました。
Alphard, our ground support intercepted a transmission from Amon air traffic control. Recon chopper has been dispatched from the body end.
了解です。作戦区域からの離脱の指示を。
We're out of time. You have to give the order to withdraw from the operations area.
いい。離脱しろ。
Fine, pull out.
西だ。
Head west. The helicopter circled around and headed westward, passing directly over the girl beside the tracks. As it did, Alphard and Caanan exchanged a silent stare.
ボス、傷の手当てを。
Boss, you should get that looked at.
ああ、そうだな。
Yes, of course. Damn, she got wounded. Wow. Yeah, and she got the same. I can't believe that he trained both of them. Jeez. Down below, Caanan continued to stare, seeing in her foe a dark reflection of herself. Wait, they started it early? Wait, I thought they started at the hour. Their origins were so similar. Two serpents, born from the same twisted nest, guided by their same mentor, and yet they had followed very different paths. They had no familiar ties, yet they were sisters all the same, bound by a fate thicker than any blood. Caanan didn't take her eyes off the helicopter until it disappeared over the horizon. Her hatred was a potent force, but even stronger now was her sense of duty. She would stop that terrorist. The girl who had possessed no goals had finally found a sense of determination born within her. Here we go. Yep. Now back to the present day. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin our descent. Please ensure that your seatbelt is fastened and that any electronic devices have been powered off. Caanan stirred. Her eyes slowly drifted open. A long dream receded. She'd be on the ground within the hour. Once the plane had landed, she would disembark by a different route than the other passengers, then board a helicopter that would be waiting for her on the runway. She stretched and resettled, steeling her resolve. After the mission in Jordan, she had gone on to learn of a certain distinguished family, wiped out in a political conflict. Now its sole surviving daughter had been trained as a mercenary. But that was a story from the past. Really, you're not sure I'm going to make it in time? There's that much left? Really, Zarmagus? Oh, then you know what? I'll save the last part for the next video. We finished the main part of the story, and I just hit a save point, so... I hate doing this. I hate doing this, but god damn was this long. There were so many flashbacks. I'll save the last part for next time, and we'll pick it up with there and some more side stories. I hate doing it like this. I fucking hate it, but... looks like we have no options. Thank you, Zarmagus, for at least telling me. It's still gonna go on more. I thought it was just gonna end after a quick checkup over here. Okay. Damn, this was long. Okay, you guys. I'll just do the last minute. What was important that we got the main story with Alphard and Caanan in the flashback, and the big flashback on the train done. We'll pick up the last little bit along with the other little side stories next time. So sorry to do this, guys. Damn Nintendo. Until then, until next time, I will say so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, good night. You're all the sweetest of hearts. See ya.